Said the gunman shot 3 people Saturday morning, killing 2 of them before killing himself. One of the victims, family says, was the mother of his child. 12 News' Courtney Sisk sat down with her parents today, who say they're heartbroken.
Our little area is gone.
Parents torn apart by the death of their child. 23-year-old Ariana Reed was one of the victims shot and killed Saturday at the Park Plaza Apartments in Brown Deer.
They lost a star, a shining star, a precious rare diamond. She was everything to us.
Reed leaves behind her 2-year-old son, Egypt. Family tells 12 News she shared that child with the suspected shooter, who police say shot and killed himself.
What I admire most about her is that she was an awesome mother.
Good job.
It deeply saddens us that her son will not be able to see that spirit anymore.
Yes.
Reed's mother says Ariana was no longer in a relationship with the suspect and moved out just a few days ago. They say she still wanted to co-parent, telling 12 News she went to drop their child off to be with his dad at the apartments. They never imagined she wouldn't make it home.
My husband and I got a phone call around 10 in the morning, and it was him saying, "It's over, come get Egypt now."
That call came from the suspect.
From my understanding is when she dropped him off and as she was leaving, he shot her from the balcony and then ended up shooting the 2 people that was trying to help our daughter. So we believed that if they would have gotten her help, she still would have been with us.
Yes.
Her child is safe and now living with his grandparents.
What do you want Egypt to grow up to be?
Like her, to be caring, loving.
At this time, it's unclear if the other shooting victims knew the suspect or if they were just trying to help. In Brown Deer, Courtney Sisk, WISN 12 News.
It was Saturday morning, February 5th, 2022, just after 9 a.m. in Brown Deer, Wisconsin. The morning looked normal. Cars were moving through the streets. People were starting their day. Families were inside their apartments. At the Park Plaza Apartments, a 23-year-old mother named Ariana Nicole Reed drove into the parking lot. Her visit was supposed to be quick. She came to drop off her small son with his father, Larval Huddleston, who lived in the apartment building. It was a simple routine. Drive to the building, meet the father, let the child go inside, then leave. But something happened in the parking lot that changed everything. Within minutes, loud gunshots broke the quiet morning. The sounds echoed between the apartment buildings. Residents inside their homes suddenly stopped what they were doing. Some people looked out their windows. Others picked up their phones and called the police. In the parking lot, a young mother had been shot. A neighbor named Michael Edward Anderson heard the gunfire and came outside. He stepped into the scene, trying to understand what was happening. But the danger was not over. Anderson was also shot. Police rushed to the apartment complex. Officers surrounded the building where the suspected gunman had gone. But during the police standoff, something unexpected happened. The man inside the apartment started streaming live on Facebook while officers waited outside. People across the internet began watching the situation unfold in real time. 2 people were already dead. Police were outside the building. And the man at the center of the investigation was broadcasting live from inside the apartment. What began as a short morning visit had turned into a deadly and public crime scene. So what exactly happened during those minutes in the parking lot? And how did a simple child drop-off end with 2 lives lost? Today, we break down the full story. Before we begin, if stories the media ignore deserve justice, then subscribe to Unseen Crime Dossiers right now. Like this video so more people can see the truth. And comment below if you believe these voices deserve to be heard. Share this story, because awareness can change everything. Welcome to Unseen Crime Dossiers, where the stories the world tries to forget are finally uncovered. Stay with us, because every case you'll see is shocking, true, and you won't want to miss a single detail. Ariana Nicole Reed was a 23-year-old woman living in the Milwaukee area of Wisconsin. She spent most of her life in the region and was known by family members, friends, and people in her neighborhood. Like many young adults in their early 20s, her life involved daily routines, family responsibilities, and plans for the future. She was raising a young son and focused much of her time on caring for him and managing the responsibilities that come with being a parent. People who knew her describe her as someone who stayed connected with relatives and maintained relationships with those around her. Her daily life included common activities, such as spending time with family, handling personal responsibilities, and arranging schedules that involve her child. One of the most important parts of Ariana Reed's life was being a mother. She had a small son who depended on her for daily care. Parenting requires planning, communication, and constant attention, especially when the child is very young. Like many parents, she needed to manage transportation, childcare, and family arrangements throughout the week. Her son's father was Larval Huddleston, and because they shared a child, both parents needed to stay in contact regarding the child's schedule. Situations like this often require parents to coordinate visits, drop-offs, and pickups so that the child can spend time with both sides of the family. These arrangements are common for parents who are no longer living together, but still share responsibility for raising a child. Reed's life involved balancing normal responsibilities that come with adulthood. She stayed in the Milwaukee area, where she was close to people who knew her well. Friends and relatives describe her as someone who spent time around family gatherings and social events. Living in a large metropolitan area like Milwaukee means being part of a busy environment filled with schools, apartment complexes, workplaces, and neighborhoods where people interact daily. Within that setting, Reed maintained a routine that centered around transportation, communication with family members, and managing life as a young parent. These activities formed the structure of her daily schedule. In situations where parents share custody or visitation, communication becomes an important part of the process. Reed and Huddleston needed to coordinate times when their son would spend time with each parent. These arrangements can involve phone calls, text messages, or meeting at specific locations. Many parents who co-parent follow similar routines to make sure the child's schedule is organized. This process can involve meeting at homes, apartments, or public places where the child is transferred from one parent to the other. Such exchanges are usually brief and are designed to allow the child to move between both households without complications. On the morning of February 5th, 2022, Reed followed one of these routine arrangements. She drove to the Park Plaza Apartments in Brown Deer, Wisconsin, where Huddleston was staying. The purpose of her visit was to drop off their young son, so he could spend time with his father. This type of visit normally takes only a few minutes. A parent arrives at the location. The child goes inside with the other parent, and the visit continues from there. Many families perform similar exchanges every day without any problems. At that moment, Reed's actions were part of a common co-parenting routine that happens across many communities. Before that day, Reed's life was largely defined by the responsibilities of being a young adult and caring for her child. Her time involved family interactions, transportation between locations, and communication with people who were part of her daily life. Friends and relatives recognized her as someone who remained connected with those close to her. Being a parent meant she needed to think about her child's needs, including food, safety, transportation, and spending time with both sides of family. These responsibilities required planning and coordination throughout the week. Understanding Reed's background helps explain the circumstances that brought her to the apartment complex on the morning of the incident. Her visit was connected to a parenting arrangement involving her son and his father. What began as a normal responsibility quickly turned into a situation that attracted police attention and later became the focus of an investigation. Looking at Reed's life before that morning shows that she was a young mother managing everyday responsibilities while maintaining communication with family members and the father of her child. This background provides context for the events that followed and explains why she arrived at the Park Plaza Apartments that day. On Saturday, February 5th, 2022, the morning in Brown Deer, Wisconsin began like many other winter mornings in a quiet suburban community. The village sits just north of Milwaukee and is made up of residential neighborhoods, apartment complexes, and local businesses. At that hour of the day, many residents were inside their homes starting their weekend routines. Some people were preparing breakfast, others were getting ready for errands, and families were moving through their normal schedules. The Park Plaza Apartments, a residential complex in the area, was also experiencing a typical start to the day. Cars were parked outside the buildings, residents were inside their units, and the parking lot appeared calm. Around the same time, 23-year-old Arina Nicole Reed drove toward the Park Plaza apartments. Her purpose for visiting the location was connected to a parenting arrangement involving her young son. The child's father, Larval Huddleston, was staying at the apartment complex. Reed arrived with the intention of dropping off the child so he could spend time with his father. Situations like this often involve short visits that take only a few minutes. One parent arrives at the location. The child goes inside with the other parent, and the parent who drove there leaves shortly afterward. These types of exchanges happen every day in many communities and usually pass without attention. When Reed entered the apartment complex parking lot, the environment still appeared routine. The buildings at Park Plaza consist of several apartment units facing shared parking areas where residents leave their vehicles. At that time of the morning, some people were still inside their apartments while others were beginning their daily activities. The parking lot served as a central space where residents arrived and left the complex. Reed parked her vehicle near the building where Huddleston was located. The expectation was that the visit would be brief and follow the usual process of a parent dropping off a child. Within a short period after Reed's arrival, the situation changed suddenly. Witnesses in the area later reported hearing multiple gunshots coming from the parking lot area of the apartment complex. The loud sounds broke the quiet atmosphere that had existed moments earlier. Residents inside the buildings noticed the noise and began reacting in different ways. Some individuals moved toward their windows to look outside and determine what was happening. Others stayed away from the windows and used their phones to call emergency services. Reports of gunfire prompted immediate concern among people living in the complex. The gunfire resulted in Reed being shot in the parking lot area. The incident unfolded quickly, and the location where it happened was in an open space visible to nearby residents. As the situation developed, a neighbor named Michael Edward Anderson became aware that something serious had occurred outside the building. Hearing the gunshots and activity in the parking lot, Anderson stepped out from his residence to see what was happening. When individuals hear disturbances near their homes, it is common for them to investigate the source of the noise, especially when the situation appears unusual. During the events that followed, Anderson was also shot. The presence of gunfire in a residential apartment complex created a situation that required immediate emergency response. By this point, multiple residents had contacted police to report what they heard. Calls describing gunshots and possible injuries prompted law enforcement officers to move quickly toward the location. Dispatchers received information from several callers, and police units began heading to the Park Plaza apartments to assess the situation and secure the area. As police approached the complex, the scene had already become the center of an active emergency. Officers arriving at the location began gathering information from witnesses and identifying where the suspect might be located. Early reports indicated that the person responsible for the shooting had moved into an apartment unit within the building. This information changed the situation from a shooting scene into a developing standoff. Officers began positioning themselves around the building while trying to understand the full sequence of events that had taken place only minutes earlier. The routine morning visit that had brought Reed to the apartment complex had now become the starting point of an investigation involving multiple victims, police presence, and a suspect believed to be inside the residence. On Saturday, February 5th, 2022, the morning in Brown Deer, Wisconsin began like many other winter mornings in a quiet suburban community. The village sits just north of Milwaukee and is made up of residential neighborhoods, apartment complexes, and local businesses. At that hour of the day, many residents were inside their homes starting their weekend routines. Some people were preparing breakfast, others were getting ready for errands, and families were moving through their normal schedules. The Park Plaza Apartments, a residential complex in the area, was also experiencing a typical start to the day. Cars were parked outside the buildings, residents were inside their units, and the parking lot appeared calm. Around the same time, 23-year-old Arina Nicole Reed drove toward the Park Plaza apartments. Her purpose for visiting the location was connected to a parenting arrangement involving her young son. The child's father, Larval Huddleston, was staying at the apartment complex. Reed arrived with the intention of dropping off the child so he could spend time with his father. Situations like this often involve short visits that take only a few minutes. One parent arrives at the location, the child goes inside with the other parent, and the parent who drove there leaves shortly afterward. These types of exchanges happen every day in many communities and usually pass without attention. When Reed entered the apartment complex parking lot, the environment still appeared routine. The buildings at Park Plaza consist of several apartment units facing shared parking areas where residents leave their vehicles. At that time of the morning, some people were still inside their apartments while others were beginning their daily activities. The parking lot served as a central space where residents arrived and left the complex. Reed parked her vehicle near the building where Huddleston was located. The expectation was that the visit would be brief and follow the usual process of a parent dropping off a child. Within a short period after Reed's arrival, the situation changed suddenly. Witnesses in the area later reported hearing multiple gunshots coming from the parking lot area of the apartment complex. The loud sounds broke the quiet atmosphere that had existed moments earlier. Residents inside the buildings noticed the noise and began reacting in different ways. Some individuals moved toward their windows to look outside and determine what was happening. Others stayed away from the windows and used their phones to call emergency services. Reports of gunfire prompted immediate concern among people living in the complex. The gunfire resulted in Reed being shot in the parking lot area. The incident unfolded quickly, and the location where it happened was in an open space visible to nearby residents. As the situation developed, a neighbor named Michael Edward Anderson became aware that something serious had occurred outside the building. Hearing the gunshots and activity in the parking lot, Anderson stepped out from his residence to see what was happening. When individuals hear disturbances near their homes, it is common for them to investigate the source of noise, especially when the situation appears unusual. During the events that followed, Anderson was also shot. The presence of gunfire in a residential apartment complex created a situation that required immediate emergency response. By this point, multiple residents had contacted police to report what they heard. Calls describing gunshots and possible injuries prompted law enforcement officers to move quickly toward the location. Dispatchers received information from several callers, and police units began heading to the Park Plaza apartments to assess the situation and secure the area. As police approached the complex, the scene had already become the center of an active emergency. Officers arriving at the location began gathering information from witnesses and identifying where the suspect might be located. Early reports indicated that the person responsible for the shooting had moved into an apartment unit within the building. This information changed the situation from a shooting scene into a developing standoff. Officers began positioning themselves around the building while trying to understand the full sequence of events that had taken place only minutes earlier. The routine morning visit that had brought Reed to the apartment complex had now become the starting point of an investigation involving multiple victims, police presence, and a suspect believed to be inside the residence. When the gunshots were heard at the Park Plaza apartments on the morning of February 5th, several residents inside the complex quickly realized that something serious had happened outside. The loud sounds echoed to the parking lot and surrounding buildings, interrupting the quiet routine that had existed earlier that morning. People inside their apartments began reacting in different ways. Some moved toward windows or balconies to see what was happening, while others stayed inside their homes and called emergency services. In residential buildings, sudden loud noises often cause residents to check on the situation, especially when the sound appears to come from nearby shared spaces, such as parking areas or walkways. One of the people who became aware of the disturbance was Michael Edward Anderson, a resident living within the apartment complex. Anderson was inside his home when the gunfire occurred. Hearing several shots coming from the parking lot area, he became concerned about what might be happening outside. Situations like this often cause residents to look outside to determine whether someone needs help or whether there is danger in the area. Based on witness accounts gathered later, Anderson left his apartment and stepped outside after the gunfire was heard. His decision placed him directly into the developing situation taking place in the parking lot. When Anderson moved toward the outdoor area of the complex, the scene he encountered had already become a serious emergency. Ariana Nicole Reed had been shot in the parking lot near the apartment buildings. The area where the incident took place was open and visible from several units within the complex. At that point, the situation was still active and had not yet been secured by law enforcement officers. People who live in apartment communities sometimes respond quickly when they believe a neighbor may need assistance, particularly if the event occurs close to their residence. Anderson's movement outside placed him in close proximity to the location where the shooting had occurred. While Anderson was in the area of the parking lot, additional gunfire occurred. During this part of the incident, he was also shot. The event unfolded within a very short period of time, and the situation remained dangerous until law enforcement arrived at the scene. By the time multiple emergency calls had reached local dispatchers, information about the shooting was already spreading among residents inside the building. Several individuals had reported hearing gunshots and possible injuries, prompting emergency responders to move quickly toward the apartment complex. As police units and emergency personnel traveled to the location, the condition of both Reed and Anderson required immediate attention. Responders arriving at the scene began assessing the situation and identifying the individuals involved. At that stage of the investigation, officers also needed to determine whether the person responsible for the shooting was still present in the area. Early information from witnesses suggested that the suspect had moved into one of the apartment units within the complex after the shooting occurred. This development required police to shift their focus toward locating and containing the suspect while also managing the crime scene. The involvement of Anderson added another layer to the investigation because he had not been part of the original interaction connected to the child exchange between Reed and Huddleston. Instead, he was a resident who became aware of the disturbance and stepped outside during the incident. When detectives later examined the sequence of events, they needed to reconstruct how and when Anderson entered the scene. Witness statements, physical evidence, and timelines helped investigators determine the order in which the events unfolded during the shooting. Establishing these details is a standard part of any investigation where multiple individuals are involved. The presence of second victim also increased the urgency of the situation for law enforcement officers responding to the complex. Police had to manage several tasks at once, including securing the area, identifying witnesses, and determining where the suspect had gone after shooting. Residents were advised to remain inside their apartments as officers worked to contain the situation. What had started as a routine morning inside the Park Plaza apartments had now become an active police response involving multiple victims, witness statements, and a search for a suspect believed to be inside the building. Shortly after multiple emergency calls were placed by residents, law enforcement officers from the Brown Deer Police Department began arriving at the Park Plaza apartments on the morning of February 5, 2022. Dispatchers had received reports describing gunshots and possible injuries in the parking lot area of the residential complex. Information from callers indicated that at least 2 people had been shot and that the person responsible might still be nearby. When police respond to reports involving firearms in a populated area, their first objective is to secure the scene and determine whether there is an ongoing threat to residents. Because the complex contained multiple apartment units and shared outdoor spaces, officers needed to quickly assess the environment while keeping nearby residents safe. As patrol vehicles reached the property, officers immediately began locating the exact area where the gunfire had occurred. The apartment complex consisted of several residential buildings positioned around shared parking spaces used by tenants. These parking areas often serve as central locations where residents arrive and leave throughout the day. Officers moved toward the section of the lot where witnesses had reported hearing the shots. Emergency responders arriving alongside police also began preparing to provide medical assistance to anyone who had been injured. At this stage, officers had limited information about the number of victims or whether the suspect was still present in the immediate area. While first responders were securing the parking lot, officers began gathering details from individuals who had called emergency services. Witnesses who had heard the gunshots described the direction from which the sounds came and explained what they had seen or heard during the incident. Several residents reported that the person believed to be responsible for the shooting had gone inside one of the apartments within the complex. This information quickly changed the nature of the response. Instead of only managing a shooting scene, officers now had to prepare for the possibility that the suspect remained inside the building. Police began establishing a perimeter around the apartment structure where the suspect was believed to be located. A perimeter is a controlled boundary used by law enforcement to prevent individuals from entering or leaving a specific area during an active situation. Officers positioned vehicles and personnel in locations that allowed them to monitor exits and surrounding pathways. Residents living nearby were advised to stay inside their apartments while officers continued their investigation. In situations where a suspect may still have access to a weapon, law enforcement typically limits movement in the area to reduce risk to the public. As additional police units arrived, the response expanded to include officers trained in handling situations involving armed suspects. Communication between officers on the ground and the investigation at the scene revealed that the suspect remained inside the apartment for an extended period. Officers monitored all available entrances while using observation techniques to track movements within the building. Surveillance equipment, tactical protocols, and information provided by witnesses were all utilized to maintain situational awareness. Throughout the standoff, emergency responders remained on standby to provide medical attention if necessary, prepared to respond immediately should any injuries occur. The combination of tactical planning and careful observation allowed law enforcement to maintain control over the situation without escalating the risk to residents or officers. During the final stages of the standoff, the suspect did not leave the apartment voluntarily. Law enforcement proceeded to execute tactical measures consistent with standoff resolution procedures. These measures included establishing secure entry points, coordinating with specialized units, and preparing for a controlled breach if necessary. Investigators documented all decisions made during this time to ensure a clear understanding of the actions taken and the sequence of events. At the same time, personnel continued to ensure that residents in nearby apartments remained safe and informed. Once officers gained access to the apartment, they confirmed the presence of the suspect. The situation inside the unit was assessed carefully, and officers followed protocols to confirm that no additional threats were present. Investigators immediately began collecting evidence inside the apartment and the surrounding area. Any items that could provide context for the incident, including weapons, personal effects, and electronic devices, were documented and secured for further analysis. The careful collection of evidence ensured that all aspects of the event could be reconstructed accurately during the investigation. Following the conclusion of the standoff, law enforcement focused on processing the crime scene in the parking lot and surrounding areas. Shell casings, blood evidence, and other physical markers were identified and photographed. Officers interviewed witnesses who had observed events from nearby apartments or from inside the complex. This phase of the response allowed investigators to establish the timeline of the shooting, identify all individuals involved, and determine how the sequence of events led to fatalities. The documentation process ensured that all information necessary for a comprehensive report was preserved. Medical personnel attended to the victims as soon as the scene was secure. Efforts were made to verify the condition of all individuals affected by the incident, including both the suspect and the victims. Forensic teams began analyzing the scene to determine the exact trajectory of shots fired and to assess other factors relevant to the investigation. Evidence gathered during this stage provided critical insight into the circumstances surrounding the incident and informed subsequent legal and investigative decisions. With the standoff officially concluded, authorities began coordinating the next steps in the investigation. Statements from witnesses, residents, and first responders were compiled. Police reports were drafted to reflect the actions taken during the standoff and the sequence of events leading to the resolution. The controlled conclusion of the incident allowed investigators to move forward with collecting information for the ongoing case while ensuring the safety of residents and law enforcement personnel. The combination of tactical planning, observation, and procedural execution ultimately brought the situation to a close and allowed the process of investigation and evidence collection to continue. Following the tragic events at the Park Plaza apartments, the surrounding community quickly became aware of the incident. News of the shooting spread through local media, social networks, and word of mouth. Residents of Brown Deer, Wisconsin, and nearby areas learned that 2 individuals had lost their lives during the morning of February 5th, 2022. The announcement of the fatalities prompted neighbors, friends, and family members to gather information about what had occurred. Local law enforcement provided updates through press releases, explaining that officers had responded to reports of gunfire and were managing the scene. Residents of the apartment complex and nearby homes responded in various ways. Many remained inside their apartments during the incident, following police instructions to stay in place for safety reasons. After the standoff concluded, neighbors emerged to observe the police presence, crime scene tape, and emergency vehicles that remain at the location. Individuals who had been inside the buildings during the shooting shared information about what they had heard or seen, assisting investigators in reconstructing the timeline. In some cases, people in the area offered to provide statements to law enforcement or reported additional details that could help determine the circumstances leading to the incident. Community members also expressed concern for the families affected by the events. Friends and relatives of the victims began gathering to check on each other and provide support. While the focus of attention was primarily on the two individuals who were killed, residents also considered the impact on the child involved in the situation, recognizing that the family dynamic had been directly affected. Local organizations and community centers coordinated to ensure that those needing assistance or counseling could access services. The response included both formal resources, such as counseling services, and informal networks, such as neighbors reaching out to one another. Local media outlets provided ongoing coverage of the incident, reporting details about the victims, the suspect, and the law enforcement response. Updates included information from police briefings, statements from family members, and background on the apartment complex. News reports aimed to keep the public informed about safety measures, timelines of the events, and the outcomes of the police response. Coverage also highlighted the actions of individuals, such as a neighbor who had attempted to assist during the shooting, providing factual accounts of what occurred without speculation or emotional commentary. Community members engaged in discussions about safety and public awareness following the shooting. Residents analyzed how such events could occur in a suburban area like Brown Deer and what preventive measures could be considered. Conversations included topics such as co-parenting arrangements, communication between residents, and emergency preparedness in multi-unit housing complexes. Individuals who had witnessed portions of the incident shared their experiences, emphasizing observation and factual details. These discussions took place in person, on social media platforms, and during neighborhood meetings. Memorials and acknowledgments appeared in the days following the incident. People placed flowers, notes, and small tributes near the apartment complex to mark the loss of life. While these actions reflected acknowledgement of the fatalities, they also served as reminders of the ongoing investigation and the need for community safety. Local authorities ensured that these gestures did not interfere with investigative procedures, while allowing residents to express respect for those affected. Public spaces near the complex became temporary focal points for community observation and reflection. The overall response from the community reflected attention to factual details, concern for affected families, and interest in understanding the circumstances surrounding the event. Law enforcement continued to provide updates, and community members participated in the investigation by offering statements and observations. Discussions about safety, procedures, and local awareness remained ongoing. The incident highlighted the importance of coordinated emergency response, accurate reporting, and community engagement in the aftermath of critical events within residential areas. Here at Unseen Crime Dossiers, we're driven by a mission to uncover hidden realities, honor forgotten voices, and keep their memories alive. If this story made you pause, reflect, or feel something, there's more coming that will challenge you even deeper. Make sure to hit subscribe, tap the like button, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss a case. We're dropping new episodes regularly, and trust us, what's ahead is even more chilling. Before you go, we want to hear from you. What moment hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments. Your perspective matters, and your voice helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, stay alert, stay informed, and never stop seeking the truth, because every life deserves to be heard. Thanks you all for watching.